Hello, everybody. Welcome to Case by Case. Sorry, it took me there a minute to get some stuff downloaded, and I've got storms here in the background. I think it's kind of screwing with my Wi-Fi. Welcome to Case by Case. This is episode 19 of the Delphi Vault. We started last week transitioning into the crime scene aspect, the theory of a ritual, non-secular sacrifice. And we started off last week with going over different elements of that type of a ritual, that type of scene, what we saw at the scene. Today, we're going to take it a little step further, and we're going to talk about Quester, his interpretation of the crime scene. I have Quester with me today, and I also have Great Lakes Fungi. I will be bringing them on rather shortly. So let me take a look at the chat and say hello to everybody. Please hit the like and subscribe and share if you haven't already. It's all free and it definitely helps the channel. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the community posts, but we did launch today the Case by Case website that we will be adding to as time goes on, the different cases that we've covered on this channel. I have a list of contributors, and there are a lot of things in the works that hopefully I will be able to share with you in the future. Everything is still being solidified, but we are looking forward to taking on new cases and doing some things behind the scenes that are definitely going to, for one, provide content for the channel, and two, also provide help to those who need it. You guys know that when I take on a case, I deep dive. It's not a 20-minute live stream and then I move on to the next case. I take on cases that I feel really need attention, whether it's a high profile case or not. There are things that I work on outside of the channel that I've never discussed and probably never will discuss, but the website is now up and live. I've posted it. It's still a work in progress. It's taken us months to get here. But everybody who's contributed along the way, I truly appreciate all of you. And yeah, I'm excited. So we've got a full pack show today. And I'm sorry if I feel a little sluggish. I've been a little under the weather since yesterday. I had planned on going live last night, and that didn't get to happen because I needed to lay down. We've had a lot of company over the past weekend with the holiday, so we've probably shared some viruses or, whatever, it happens. But I'm work, just so you guys know what's in store for the next couple of days. I work tomorrow, my big girl job, and then I will be off and at home Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So I have some things scheduled that's not posted yet, but I do have some things scheduled that I've been working on that we can, utilize our time this weekend. Since the weather is changing, and at least here anyway, it's stormy, it gives me a great excuse to sit in front of this computer. So I'm going to bring on my great friends. There's Quester. Hello, Quester.
Hi, Amy. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Great Lakes Fungi. How are you guys?
What up?
Hi.
So I thought, let me see. Hey, sweet dude Chibi. Hey, everybody in chat. You guys know I'm not big on, spending a half hour going name by name. I love you all. Thank you for being here. No drama, please, in the chat. I know there's some newbies here, and we all are adults. We all get along. We're all here for different reasons, but collectively, we should be able to discuss and have opinions without any kind of ridiculing, debating, or name calling, at least on this channel. I really, really try hard to keep this a very adult atmosphere and a very serious atmosphere for the most part, because these topics that we discuss are serious. I don't take the lives of two little girls lost lightly, and I think everyone can agree with that. Mods, welcome. You guys have the wrench for a reason. Feel free to utilize it with discretion. Make sure that you give everybody a fair shot of speaking their mind. But when things get out of hand, you have the ability to do what the wrench allows you to do. So just a fair warning for those of you who like to come in and troll, please don't. Anyway, we are going to start off this episode a little bit differently. if I'm able to pull it up, we've just got notification, and I want to thank you to all of you guys who messaged me immediately. We are going to start off today with a new filing in Richard Allen's case from his appellate attorneys. It's not shocking. It's not major. It's not a big one. But it does, in my opinion, it does provide, a little bit of a jab at the court saying, you made this decision, you did this, and now you're going to pay for it. Because what they've done is they've moved Rick Allen out of state, and they have created a conundrum of his attorneys do not have access to him, as if, they can just show up at the prison and speak. Anyway, I don't, if I were them, I would not trust a Zoom call. Those types of things can be monitored and recorded, especially because I know firsthand, based on attorney-client Zoom calls, that there is always someone in the room who is facilitating that communication. So I don't blame them in the least for not wanting to do a Zoom call. And I'm sure it's not favorable to them as attorneys to have to pack up and hop on a plane and go visit their client. So this, I'm going to read this motion. It is motion for authorization for funds for attorney-client visit. The defendant, Richard Allen, by counsel, respectfully requests this court to authorize reasonable expenses incurred by counsel to travel out of state for an attorney-client meeting with Mr. Allen. In support of the motion, Allen states the following. The state public defender appointed undersigned counsel to represent Mr. Allen on appeal from his convictions. On January 8th, 2025, this court accepted the appointment. In the order accepting the appointment, the court ordered that pursuant to code, and it gives the number, the minimum fee for services of any attorney appointed by the state public defender and judge under a request made to the state public defender may not less be than the state public defender's schedule of minimum attorney fees provided by the Indiana Supreme Court. 3. The state public defender's schedule of minimum attorney fees requires that costs and expenses incurred on the client's behalf shall be reimbursed where said costs were reasonably necessary for representation of the client. That is underline, boldface, smack in the court's face. This is what you are obligated to do, regardless of what decision has been made to move Rick Allen out of the state of Indiana. That should not interfere with his constitutional right to representation. Period. Exhibit A, order approving minimum fees for legal services of the state public defender and appointed public defenders. These costs include travel and lodging. Number 4, the cost of counsel traveling to Oklahoma to meet confidentially, that should be highlighted as well, confidentially with Mr. Allen is a reasonable and necessary cost of effective appellate representation. Counsel intends to fly the day before the visit and return the day after, and to fly economy. Allen has a right to effective representation of appellate counsel guaranteed by the 6th Amendment to the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 13 of the Indiana Constitution. As part of the appellate counsel's representation, it is imperative they consult with the client about the issues to be raised on appeal and their understanding of the trial. The American Bar Association, Criminal Justice Standards for Defense Function, 4th edition from 2017, Standard 4 9.2, requiring appellate counsel to discuss with client the arguments to be presented in appellate briefing and at argument, and reach an agreement, if possible, on the issues to raise. It is especially important to meet with a client when the record on appeal is voluminous as Mr. Allen's. Mr. Allen's transcript is 37 volumes including exhibits. In addition, the record includes approximately 3,000 pages of pleadings and orders filed regarding various legal issues and 148 media files and 40 document files admitted as electronic exhibits. The Indiana Department of Correction has transferred Mr. Allen to a prison in Oklahoma. Communication with Mr. Allen has been difficult, especially confidential communication. Undersigned counsel has been in contact with the Oklahoma prison. They have scheduled a confidential attorney-client meeting for the week of September 14th, 2025. Counsel has scheduled the meeting for an entire morning to ensure that they can address all issues in one meeting. Undersigned counsel, who have perfected hundreds of criminal appeals, routinely visit with their private and public defender clients in person to discuss the issues prior to filing appellate briefs. Mr. Allen should be treated no differently than they recite different case law. Wherefore, the defendant, Richard Allen, by counsel, respectfully requests this court to authorize counsel to travel out of state to have an attorney-client meeting with Mr. Allen and for all other relief just improper in the premises. Respectfully, Stacy Alana. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. I don't think that we should even be in this position. I don't think that Rick should be out of the state of Indiana, not until his legal appeals have been exhausted. And the fact that attorneys even have to take time out of their workday to even write a motion like this, to request funds for them to communicate privately with their client is absurd, but it must be done. Fungi, Quester, do you guys have any comments?
No, I agree with you. It's absolutely ridiculous that someone has to fly to see their client.
Well, nothing in this case is surprising anymore, and I think that's becoming the real problem with, everybody thinks that what we're seeing is normal behavior, which I hope the appellate court will see how ridiculous and outrageous the behavior of this judge and how this case was handled from beginning to end. I hope they recognize that, and I hope they really don't try to treat the public like we're all idiots and there's nothing to see here, like Judge Gall has tried to do since Rick Allen has been arrested. Okay, guys, are you ready to get into what we're all here for today?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. I think that Fungi keeps getting her, I don't know if her internet is dropping. I'm not sure, but she keeps bouncing in and out. So, okay, so if you guys remember last week, we went over, we started this segment of basically everything that we're talking about in the vault starting last week with episode 18 is pretty much surrounded by the Frank's memo, all the information that came out in the Frank's memo. And probably what I plan to do, I have a whole nother presentation prepared that I worked on last night surrounding, which Quester, I hate the fact that we're on different time zones because I would love for you to be there for it. But in order to take advantage
of that,
that's okay. And in order to take advantage for the time that I have off work, these full days that I've taken, it's imperative that these things are discussed, and these will be incorporated into the playlist of the Delphi Vault. We are hopefully this evening. I will be continuing the conversation that I started with Veronica, who happened to pop on the other night. with a random live, and it turned out to be a great conversation. But the facts remain that the Franks memo was not a delusionized concoction of the defense. It was actual real evidence that was presented to the defense by the state. However, what the state tried to do was they tried to pretend that that part of the investigation never happened. That is why we see, this is my opinion, I believe that we don't have interviews or videoed interrogations lost. I believe they've been destroyed, hidden. I do not believe it's a double-edged sword. Again, this is my opinion, and it's my channel, so I'm going to say it. I do not believe a crime of this magnitude that occurred in such a small community would have been so blatantly put on the shelf to collect dust, to only realize months later that everything that they had collected had vanished, had been recorded over, or had been lost. You are either admitting that you have no business wearing a badge, you have no business calling yourself a law enforcement officer, investigator, sheriff, prosecutor. If that type of neglect and miscare of such important information can be just solely thrown up on a shelf, we'll get to it later. I mean, think about that. They bring in someone to interview them, and you usually have one or two investigators sitting in on the interview. But those one or two investigators aren't the end all be all to the judgment of that interrogation. Do they not go back to their team of investigators and say, okay, let's look at this and see what we all think collectively and how we should proceed dealing with this suspect that we just interviewed? Well, that couldn't have happened because it was taped over. But they didn't know that? I don't believe that, not for 1 minute. So all of this to me screams nefarious behavior from day one. And either the courts are going to allow defense attorneys to play it out in court, or it's going to be up to the public to bring light to it all and make sure that regardless to what a Judge Gall believes or rules, that we see things much differently. So we started last week with the Franks motion information, going through the things that were highlighted and discussed. What we're going to do today is, behind the scenes, there's been a lot of work being done, and Quester and then Fungi. I'm going to put both of you on the spot. Quester, I don't think that people realize your inept knowledge of this type of religion, your knowledge of the gods, the runes, the historical philosophy behind Norse pagan, and ultimately the new modern Norse neo-paganism beliefs and rituals. Can you give the viewers a little bit of an insight to your knowledge? You don't have to discuss your schooling and all of that, but just discuss how you acquired the knowledge that you have. Because I think that's going to carry a lot of weight when it comes to us discussing your interpretation of this crime scene.
You're asking me your question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. As I said, I have had some schooling, and part of that schooling was folklore and tradition. That covered a very wide field, but it required knowledge of the other aspects, non-Christian, if you know what I mean, Nordic, Sumerian, as much as possible, and how they filter into modern day, how they filter into Christianity, etc. Part of that is understanding the languages that we use, the Old Greek Kioni, the hieroglyphs, and of course, runes. So this is years old on knowledge, but it's still there at the back of my head. So I've got the benefit of university training in that. That help you?
Yes, I think, and it sheds a little bit of light on your knowledge of some of the things that we are going to be discussing in the next multiple episodes, because this aspect of the case, for me anyway, I'm like a very, I guess, a detailed oriented person, and I have still yet to grasp fully the understanding of the crossroads of all of the different Norse pagan, the neo-paganism, the Asatru, the different ways that in modern day, how they've been distorted or manipulated and used to make a religion cultivated that fits their needs. And yesterday I was really struggling reviewing. I was focusing on the runes, and I've looked over them prior to now, but I need this stuff fresh in my brain because we do cover so much on this channel. But I was having a really hard time yesterday digesting the interpretations of it all. And I actually messaged Quester this morning and said, okay, is this analogy correct? And the way, and he agreed, interpreting this sort of behavior, this sort of a crime scene, in the way that the defense promoted it in their motion, or their filings of the Franks motion. It was based on the investigation that the state actors performed. However, there's no one right or wrong answer to any of this. And the way that I perceive it, based on there are tons of websites out here that give really good in-depth knowledge. However, none of them that truly practice any of these religions in this way really acknowledge that human sacrifice is a real thing. Which, for those that, are declaring themselves, Norse pagan, or they follow Asatru beliefs, that really gives them a bad name, and that's a sad thing. But it is a real thing in the modern day age of bad actors using this sort of thing to promote their negative beliefs towards society or a race or things of that nature. And I compared it to a painter who is, he's got his own little painting studio somewhere off in a nook in his home, and he's painting by himself his masterpiece. And it's not a clear depiction of one set image. It is mentally his beliefs, his desires, his emotions being put out on a canvas. And the intriguing part about that painter and what he's trying to accomplish is he's going to present it to the world and then sit back and watch you attempt to interpret it, what this painting implies. And when it comes to a situation like a crime scene like this, where there's so many elements of possibilities, that's what I feel like we're left with. It's all based on interpretation. And so that's what we're going to discuss today. And we're going to start off with Quester's interpretation of the crime scene. But I also wanted to allow Fungi to drop a little bit of her knowledge on all of you about her studies, and we do have a really nice documented report that she had done years prior to this case even being in the forefront. So, Fungi, do you want to discuss your knowledge and your schooling as far as how you've studied this sort of religion or philosophy?
So I was born actually in Europe. I was born on the Baltic coast. And if you know anything about the history of that area, they had the Northern Crusades, which were the only crusades actually like fought in Europe. Basically, the Baltic area pagans, uh, they retain a lot of their beliefs still to this day. There's a lot of little things that you just don't see elsewhere. Um, so I had a personal interest in that because of where I was born, and I wanted to learn a lot more about it. Um, and so I've done a lot of reading, and it basically all you need to really know is that the Baltic pagans and Norse paganism and even Celtic paganism all have similarities. Like there's like there's a Thor in each one. There's like an Odin in each one. They have different names, maybe have different significance, but it's a lot like, that there are different subsets of even the Norse Germanic paganism. I mean, some of them buried their dead, some of them burned their dead, some of them it's really regional. So that's kind of part of it. But yeah, that's basically it's a personal interest. And when you get into the history of like things like mushrooms, it actually kind of coincides and crosses with a lot of these religions, because they were a big part, because psychedelics take part in them and stuff like that. So that's kind of part of my that's kind of where I come from. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I guess the basis for how difficult it is to decipher what we're looking at is, one, you have to go over all of the indicators, all of the elements of what we see at this crime scene. And then again, we are only left with third and fourth party imagery. We don't have actual crime scene photos. Even the ones that were leaked, I feel, have been a little whitewashed. I don't believe they were edited, but they were the color scheme on it was kind of whitewashed. So we're still only left with a minimal amount of evidence to interpret. And that's all that we're doing when we're covering this aspect of the case. And we're going to start with, let me see here. What Quester
No,
has
Keith,
done.
I cannot recommend you a mushroom that would fuck you up. I mean, jack you up. Sorry.
So we're going to start with today. What we're going to do is we're going to go over from beginning to end Quester's interpretation of the crime scene, and we've highlighted some of the important aspects of what we're seeing. Just it's an educated guess, and I'm going to go through there because what Quester sees, I agree with. However, I also have a theory and an outlet of other areas of these runes and the crime scene that I think could possibly be how the people that were at the crime scene wanted to project the imagery that we were left with. And it varies.
Can I say one thing before Quester starts? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It just, I think my thing like drops and it seems like it. Anyways, so I just want to say that in the official crime scene, the exhibit that we have released, it's kind of like a little blue, almost kind of pale blue background image. If you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen it. it does not actually show a sort of 3-stick asterisk that is directly to the left of Abby, which I found very interesting. So it makes me think, what else were they missing, or what else did they overlook? Anyways, oh yeah, and Amanita muscaria, yeah, very, very important beliefs. Sometimes you will get poison die with it. Sometimes you will have an awesome trip. And the followers drink the urine and let get less sick. Actually, it's reindeer will come toward, if you have had Amanita muscaria and you pee, reindeer are attracted to it. So that's kind of part of the Christmas mythology, by the way. Anyways, I'm done.
Quester, before we get started, do you want to emphasize before we go forward your state of mind as far as when you put this piece together?
Well, as you were saying, it's very hard with we'll call it Odinism to define exactly what's going on. There are so many different ways that it's played. It's almost like a pick and mix sweet shop. You go in there with your bowl, you put in what you like, take a few of these, take a few of that, and out you go. That's very much what they call Odinism is today. So when you look at what's at the crime scene, you will see a lot of things, and you can say, yes, that's a Hager, that's this, that's that. That means ABC. Well, yes, it does in the book, and yes, it does in history. But what was the person who did it thinking? That's a different question. And that's a question you can't really answer without that person standing in front of you. So we're forced to look at it from an interpretive angle. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. And this is kind of based on the blood expert at trial, the imagery that we have, the actual photo of the tree, and all of the symbolisms that come along with what if you are hell-bent on believing that this was a ritualistic crime, then I guess what I want to do over the course of the next few episodes is basically dissect and rule out what is, what could be, and what isn't. And with the imagery that I have on the screen right now, based on all of the testimony and the input and the research, there's some things here that really add up. When you're looking at the F tree, and it has been stated in the Frank's motion that this is a rune and it was drawn on the tree. I know Quester believes that this could possibly be a handprint. The vertical lines, I guess I can say I disagree, simply because it does not. I think I went over this last episode. The lack of, if this is where at this tree where the AKA F symbolism was drawn on the tree, I would have expected this to have been where the first initial violent attack started, which is what I believe the state wanted us to believe, that this was a handprint, that the tree was used as support, and there's a lack of blood splatter, in my opinion, on this tree. There's no detail of any type of trajectory of blood splatter or Libby using the tree to support herself. And I would think that the blood splat, just based on the research and some of the, which I haven't gotten into yet, there are some reenactments from actual real experts who show you different blood spatter techniques and how they determine what created the blood splatter. We're not seeing any of that here, at least in my opinion. And I know I've talked with Fungi about this the base pooling of blood down here at the bottom of the crime scene being a possible area where there was a makeshift altar set up. And what you can't see in this imagery is the direction of the blood flow on Libby. At some point in time, Libby had to have been inverted. The blood flow from her neck goes upwards onto her face. And if there was a makeshift altar, and this was a bloodletting ceremony where they're collecting blood, where the largest pool of blood, in my opinion, would be where that blood could have been collected. And then to sanctify the ritual and to do the markings that the perpetrators wanted to leave, or to solidify the ritual that they were trying to impose to the gods, asking for certain things from the gods or presenting offerings to the gods. If from the blood pool here at the bottom of the crime scene, these individuals or individual was walking back and forth to and from the altar to the tree, that could also explain these smaller pools of blood in between the tree and this larger pool of blood, causing spillage if they were taking the bowl with them, using their fingers or a stick. That's another thing that in the mythology is when they're at a ceremony like this, they will use some sort of a tool to splatter or forecast blood across the scene, which, based on the trial testimony, there is splatter on Libby's body. You don't see it in this photograph, and to be honest, you don't even see it in the leaked crime scene photos. But it is reported that there was splatter on Libby's body. Could that have come from a stick being dipped into the bowl at the altar and then splattered over top of her? I don't know. It's a possibility. We're discussing all different avenues. I'm not saying this is what happened. All I'm saying is this is a possibility, and it cannot be ignored. So, Fungi, Quester, chime in.
I agree. The problem is that tree, the bark is so rough, it's hard to determine how the blood was put on there. If it's been a nice smooth surface, you could see where it's dragged on it, where it's spattered on it, and so on. But you can't with this one.
And then that's where physics and science and everything else comes into play. When I believe that the blood expert at trial stated that Libby was upright when she was attacked. And I said last week, I will die on that hill, that I believe that Libby was attacked from a frontal attack. I don't believe the injuries that occurred on her neck happened from someone standing behind her, cutting her vertically from top to bottom. And the incision itself, when that initial incision is made, that is where you're going to get the most pulsating splatter of blood, because it's being released into the atmosphere. And
one thing I look for there is a blood drip that abruptly stops, which would signify maybe it's being collected.
Yes. And if she's been pulled over, like when you, like I've watched, and maybe I'll get them uploaded on here, but I've watched several different videos of these sort of sacrifices being done with an animal, a sheep or a lamb, and they incapacitate the animal, and then they make the incisions on the throat. And the incisions are done in a very vertical manner on each side of the neck at the carotid artery. And then the animal's head is then leaned over into a collection bowl, which, depending on the location of where Libby was physically, could that be why we are seeing that blood flow go upward? We just don't know. But if there was a collection of blood, that would explain, like we've got blood pools over here to the left of the crime scene. And we have very minimal blood spillage in the actual crime scene surrounding both girls. And I believe that most people at trial who actually seen the real physical photographs of the crime scene constantly emphasize the lack of blood at the scene. And I have always thought that if Libby was upright, like the blood splatter expert described, the gravity is going to, whether it's splattering or not, it's going to cover the front of her body, her chest, her breast, her stomach, her torso area. You're talking 7 liters of blood within the human body being released. It's like turning on a hose full blast out of a very tiny vein in the neck. We are not seeing this at all. And in the leaked crime scene photos, you're not seeing that at all. Oh my goodness, I just heard your
Sorry,
baby.
that was Trevor.
No, you're fine. I love
big.
them. You have the best chickens. They're divas.
Shut the fuck up, Trevor.
So let's start with Quester's interpretation. And I've taken, he wrote a nice report from beginning to end, and I've taken it and I've put it into a format where we can go through it, and it's easy to understand. And I've also added pictures and commentary that kind of help explain certain aspects. But first and foremost, we're going to start with, the blot, which is the ceremony itself.
Can I just say one thing about the tree?
Sure.
So I believe that it is an American sycamore. If anyone here has an American sycamore, they're kind of rare, but if anyone has one in their yard or knows where one is and would love to perform a little test or whatever, then you should. I would love to see what you do. I have some very similar textured cross sections of wood that I'm going to be using. I meant to do it earlier, but it started raining and pouring yesterday, and my chickens got sad. So anyways, an American sycamore.
That is what you believe that the that's
tree
what you
is.
Okay.
Yes.
And that goes into so when you think about this crime as a whole, you really only have 2 options in my opinion with this crime. It's as elaborate and pre-planned and staged as it appears to be, or the perpetrator got lucky and did ridiculous things that really just confused us all. And if you go with the first opinion, that it's elaborate
and the investigation sucked.
Huh?
And Trevor, shut up. And the investigation.
Yeah,
the investigation was a big hamper.
Well, and they for years made us believe that this was such a complex crime scene, and and now that we're seeing it and we're going with what we had been hand fed by law enforcement for years, now they want to retract from all of that. But when you look at everything involved, you can't help but say, okay, wait a minute, how this is not simple. This is not a lone wolf. And did these people go out there and pick their placement for this scene to be set up? Did they pre-plan it in the sense they went out there and they found the perfect location to perform their offering? And we're going to get into why this could possibly be. But for right now, we just want to make it very clear that what we're discussing here is note.
Would you please?
Let me
control
see
yourself?
here. My
Control yourself, young man.
my time spot here is covering up the words. The presentation about the events and cause in what we're talking about is theoretical, based on what was found at the crime scene and interpretations of such in order to examine the claim in the Frank's motions. No reference to persons should be seen as an allegation against that person, only as part of a theoretical examination. Just want to make that clear. And if this is a bloat, that is how it's pronounced. I know that it reads blot, but it is pronounced as bloat, which is a religious, ceremonial offering, ritualistic type event. What we are doing is we are trying to put our own personal interpretations on it. You guys are free to have your own opinions, and nothing that we say here is factual. This is all for interpretation. And this is an open discussion, but the events surrounding this are factual. 2 little girls' lives were lost. The manner that they were found is factual. The elements of the scene are factual. How we interpret them is what is going to be all up for opinion. So, based on the theology and the runes and symbolism, there are 6 things that we can look for that this type of religion will implement at any type of a ceremony. Number 1, runes serve as ancient symbols representing various concepts and energies. Each rune has a specific meaning, often tied to nature, emotions, or spiritual guidance. Offerings are made to honor deities and spirits, enhancing the connection to the divine. The act of offering can symbolize gratitude, respect, or a request for assistance. The combination of runes, which would be AKA bind runes, and offerings can create powerful rituals for manifestation. Observing the outcomes of these rituals can indicate their effectiveness in spiritual alignment. And to put it plainly, for me, and as bizarre as a case like this might seem to somebody who thinks that Rick Allen is guilty, or for those who think that the Odinism aspect of this case is not a real thing, I just want to kind of implant this thought in your head. Children who play together, they do things that their heart is connected with. You know, I have a son. He had friends over all the time. The first thing they wanted to do was they wanted to go out in the driveway and play basketball. They wanted to go out in the backyard and put on a scrimmage football game. When you're looking at grown men who you can fully see are committed to creating engagements of coming together and putting forth this type of, I don't even know what the word is that you would call it, this interest, this heartfelt desire to present publicly that they are practicing, representing, fully devoted to this type of a religion or belief system, why should we not take it serious? These are grown men who are presenting to the world this, every time they're together, we're seeing this type of behavior and they're wanting to promote it. So I feel like you can't disregard the bizarre nature of this crime when, for most of us who never even considered following this type of religion, we would say, oh, okay, that's absurd. But to them, this is their way of life. This is their belief system. And so therefore you have to put yourself in that type of a mindset that how far is too far? How much is beyond being realistic as to what extent they will go to prove in their own inner self that they are true believers of this type of a belief system. That's kind of how I see this. It's either bizarre and not worthy of anybody even paying attention to, or taking this serious based on what we're seeing at the crime scene, based on what we were told by law enforcement, and based on those surrounding this case and the connections to this type of a belief system. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, I think what you have to do is you have to look at this in stages. The first stage is to decide whether or not there is enough there to say there are, excuse me, it is indicative of Odinism. If you find no, then the whole thing is finished. If you find yes, then you move on to having to accept that somebody knew what they were doing. From there, you can move on to, was it done on purpose or was it staged? And you also move into the question of who would have that knowledge. Would you agree?
And that's the big, absolutely. That is the biggest issue for me, getting past this part of the crime is it's one thing to stage. And when I think of staging, I think of somebody trying to make it appear a certain way. But when you add in all of the factors, when you add in the meanings behind what we're seeing, they're deep. The runes, the bind runes, the wounds themselves, the non-dressing and the undressing, the tree, the body positions. You cannot ignore the symbolic meaning behind all of these things. And there comes a cross point where you go, okay, did this person just get absolutely lucky? Or was this thought out and set up to be exactly down the trajectory of what they wanted us to see it as, which was a ritual, an offering, and it's very unbalanced as far as what we're seeing. It's not luck, it's not pretend, it's not one or two little things here or there that you can question. It is the entire scene as a whole. When you put it together, it paints a picture, it tells a story, it represents exactly what all of the indicators on the checklist describe that's required to say this was a ritualistic ceremony. We have all of the checkpoints.
If I can just pick up on what Caron, is it? Caron Hall said, that she doesn't think this was a sacrifice. It was done by some sicko that dabbled in this religion. Well, yes and no. We have to remember with this modern day Odinism, it is almost 90% some sicko dabbling in the religion of Norse mythology or Astarte. Sartru, sorry.
Yeah, it's both.
And sacrifice. Yes,
why not both?
Sorry?
Yeah, why not both, right?
You also have to bear in mind what sacrifice means. At its base level, all it means is giving up something precious to someone else.
This would be considered an offering too, in terms of the nomenclature that they probably would use.
Yeah, an offering
So
fits the
if you
description
think
of
about it like,
sacrifice as well.
yeah, if you think about it like that, though, it just there's different. I guess there might be some different connotations with it. Which, granted, yeah, if we're thinking of killing humans, yeah, that sounds like a sacrifice. But you got to remember that for the people who are committing this, they may be deluded and just purely see it as an offering.
Yeah.
Well, I think too that when we have not yet gotten into the suspects in this case, we're discussing the crime scene first and foremost, because the crime scene is the story. The crime scene is the theatrics, or what we're either going to disregard it, or we're going to embrace all of the elements of the crime scene and try to decipher what is being displayed. And on top of what we're seeing at the crime scene, all of the elements, when you connect that with the suspects, it goes even deeper. What the ceremony could have been about, and how it, when you're looking at modern day paganism or the Norse neo-paganism philosophies, it's a manipulated belief. And you have those who try to stay with the historical norms, and this is taboo, sacrificing a human being, especially against their will, because in historical times, a sacrifice would be typically a volunteer. For whatever reason, that was something that was
Prisoner of
honoring.
war.
Yes, I mean, it would be, they would be willing to sacrifice themselves.
Sometimes.
And Quester gets into this, and how you'll see the twisted variations of the historical norms crossing over to the modern day. When you're using manipulation I guess they believe that they can before the ceremony starts, they can manipulate the sacrifice, and that's not going to affect the actual ritual in itself. It's not going to taint the ritual itself. They're trying to set up this as historically aligned with the religion as possible, but they're still using personal manifestations on how to make that happen. But we can't ignore, when we get into the suspects, that's why we're going over the crime scene first, and then it'll make certain aspects of the crime scene more enlightened when we start to plug in the different suspects and what might have been taking place at that time, and how that even bolsters what the crime scene is telling us. Trying to highlight you guys in chat. So first thing, go
Christy,
ahead.
if you want to send me the image that you're looking at, I'd love to see it. In terms of that you think it looks like a birch. It doesn't look like any birch I've ever seen, because birch at that size typically have white bark, and it peels in a horizontal manner, whereas this has plating, like kind of little scales almost looking on it. As birches get much older, they will have true bark, but that it still does not look like plating. So I just, but if you want to message me on Twitter or Great Lakes Fungi at gmail.com, instead of the word great, just do a GR8. I'd be down to hear it or see it.
So the first part of Questor's interpretation, I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to let him elaborate. So first, this is an interpretation of the crime scene. This is not facts. This is a knowledgeable, educated interpretation of what we're seeing. First, there was a celebration of an important date for Frey and for Vali. Vali would be Odin's son. Plus, there was the prime reason for the bloat, communion with Odin. This required a ritual, a bloat, between sunset on the 13th and sunset on the 14th of February. Better to be in the night hours, therefore sunset to sunrise. In fact, being for two gods, an enhanced bloat, so to speak, would have seemed necessary, given this was for three of the most important gods. And this is the time frame, the date, the sunset to sundown. All of that is a real aspect of the symbolism and ritual theory on when to do a bloat. So, Questor, I'll let you elaborate on this portion of this that I just read. And if you could explain who the three gods are. Oh, Questor, you're muted.
Sorry. The three gods that you can immediately see, we'll start with the big one, Odin. He would be there, or they'd want him there to hand over his knowledge and to make the whole thing strong. But on that day, there was also the commemoration for Frey and for Vali. I won't go too much into depth for those two, but let's just say they're very important gods. Vali being the son of Odin, especially. He's a little bit of how should we say, a warrior. He's quite happy to pick up the bow and arrow and put one through you. He's that sort of a guy. Frey, she's a nature-orientated god. So you've got all these three aspects that you're playing to all at the same time. And that makes it very hard. When you're dealing with just one god, you just follow that all the way through, same line. Three different gods, and you're trying to appease all three. It takes a lot of work, a lot of planning. Now, one of the other things that was involved, you recall we were talking about a new Gothi, or Gothi, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Brad, yeah, one of the suspects in the case claimed that he was stepping down as the tribe's Gothi, and he was passing that title on to Patrick Westfall.
Yeah. Now, when the new Gothi comes in, he needs the sacred knowledge. Yes, he can read books and he can read what the runes and so on, but the religion requires that he receives the sacred knowledge. And he can only receive that from Odin, which again brings in the necessity to have Odin present, as it were. To have Odin present, you must appeal to him. And the best way, shall we say, to appeal to him is to mimic his self-sacrifice that he used to gain the sacred knowledge. And the new Gothi needs that sacred knowledge in order to be able to run the tribe. Without it, he cannot show his devotion to the religion, to the tribe, his ability and willingness to carry out the tasks, or anything like that. It is imperative that he has it. So imperative that that Gothi must be willing to do whatever it takes. Yep.
So next is we have, second, there was the investiture of the new Gothi, necessitating a call to Odin for the sacred knowledge to be given to the new Gothi. And of course, like you just said, the new Gothi would need to demonstrate his knowledge, his devotion to the tribe, and demonstrate his willingness and ability to carry out any necessary task to please or state the gods. And as a side note, the primary job of the Gothi would be considered, they're a chieftain of the tribe. Their role is to be the leader of the kindred, a maintainer of the kindred in religious, spiritual, and personal matters. And if we go back to last week's episode and we look at, sorry guys, it's got a lot in here. And we look at Brad Holder's post. This is from February 5th. So about 2 weeks, not even quite 2 weeks before this crime, we have Brad Holder making a Facebook post where he states, "Today is a milestone in my life. I feel excited and upset at the same time. I will be stepping down as Gothi in tribe of Gungster's Path. The gods are pushing me to be a traveling Gothi to help people set up kindreds in Indiana. I feel this is lacking. Patrick Westfall will take over my responsibility as Gothi for tribe of Gunther's Path. I'm going to be having lots of meet and greets. It's time, Indiana, for you to quit being a virtual heathen." So when you take that into account to understand what the basis of this would be for, you can't ignore that. And the passing on of one title to another with what we're seeing at the crime scene.
Keith,
And
hilarious. Do
Go ahead.
they white smoke out of a shack when they pick a new Gothi?
I didn't hear you. What was that? You
Did
broke
you see
up
what
a
he
little
said?
bit.
Do they do white smoke out of a shack when they pick new Gothi?
Oh, I don't
The
know.
Pope.
I suppose they could.
So next up, we have the heightened importance. The heightened importance of the meeting would require heightened ritual, especially for Odin to be worthy of Odin's favor, granting rune and spiritual knowledge to the new Gothi would involve rituals of mimicry of Odin's own self-sacrifice. Thus, we move into a need for sacrifice. So Odin's sacrifice on the tree of life, the world tree, Odin sacrificed his eye at Mimir's well for wisdom and knowledge. He hung himself on the Yggdrasil, which I'm saying that wrong. There's a way to say that, and it doesn't sound like the way it's spelled. I just didn't put that in here. Sorry.
I'm
He
kind of
hung
enjoying
himself-
it though.
Yeah, it's funny, but it sounds more pleasant when you pronounce it the right way. He hung himself on the world tree, the tree of life, the Yggdrasil, the world tree for 9 days to gain the runes. His self-sacrifice symbolizes the pursuit of enlightenment and power, Odin's actions reflect the Norse belief in the importance of sacrifice for greater gains. His sacrifices highlight the themes of fate and the interconnectedness of life and death in Norse mythology. So one of you elaborate, because I made a fool of myself already trying to pronounce these names.
Shall I think you out of that one? Oh.
Yeah,
the pronunciation.
Yeah, the. Oh yeah, no, you go. You go. Sorry.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
The pronunciation. Right. It's a.
Yeah, no.
Pronounce it with a. You go first, Fungi. Go on.
Shut up! No, I'm shutting up. You're gonna start. I'll end.
Do you want to fight?
Pass the. Do you have the talking stick or do I?
I haven't got it.
Oh, it's like one of those therapy things. Anyways, no, you go first. I need to go yell at my rooster 1 second.
Okay. Yeah. The word you're having problems with. The Y, pronounce it as sort of a long I. The double G, sort of as a long Germanic, a sh sort of noise. The DRA, pronounce it as a DRU. Yeah? So you get it sort of Drusil. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make it easier?
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I do have it somewhere. I did save it because I was like, I got to make sure I say this right. And then I forgot to put it in here. And it's actually, to be honest, it's a beautiful language. Like the way things are pronounced and the way they're spelled are contradictory, but it's actually the verbiage is very pretty.
If you remember, there's a slight Germanic to it. It helps you a bit.
Yeah, and the philosophy behind Odin sacrificing himself to gain the runes, it was more so, from the way that I interpret it, is he's gaining the knowledge and the meaning behind the runes, and that whole topic is complex to me, simply because you're dealing with a older folk heart alphabetic system versus the younger folk heart, which is where the interpretations came. Futhark.
Close enough. It works. Yeah, no, but I mean, the main lesson, basically, the main idea to just understand about it is that this story about Odin basically cements the fact that if you want something, you have to offer or sacrifice something. So you have to give something to get something. And that's a very big part of sort of, if you're going to get this special knowledge, or if you're going to trying to get something extraordinary, you need to give something extraordinary. So sometimes that was your effort in battle. Sometimes that was spilling your own blood. Sometimes that was spilling blood of others, or, that kind of thing. But it's kind of the main theme that it sort of brings out. And the other thing I want to say is with, you did mention the, no, I forgot what I was going to say. It's something about the tree. Oh yeah, the world tree. So the world tree is a concept that's literally universal in basically every ancient religion. It's really kind of cool, actually. You can find it in Mesoamerica. You can find it in the Middle East. You can find it in it's really cool. But it's basically the idea that as above, so below. So basically, it represents the higher heavens are the branches, the trunk is sort of the tree that keeps things up, and then the roots are the underworld. But what it kind of reflects in a way is, if you kind of look at trees, how big their sort of canopy, I guess, is, or like how wide that their branches are. This is just kind of general knowledge. How wide their branches are is actually usually about how wide their roots will go, because they have like sort of this drip, like where the water drips down. That's sort of this perimeter, so that they have this like circle around it. And so if you think about that, it's basically, if you put the tree upside down, it's not perfectly the same thing, but it's reflective. And that's kind of a principle in a lot of these ancient religions. It's the underworld is reflective of, it is reflective of what's above. And so I just yeah, it's skinheads recruiting new skinheads. I I I have some knowledge, personal experience from the past, asking questions about this, knowing a lot about this. So it's really, it kind of pisses me off. But yeah.
You're good. So next up, we have a part of Quester's interpretation is in Norse mythology, the tree of life is an enormous ash tree that connects the 9 worlds. And I hope to be able to incorporate that information into one of these lives, discussing the 9 realms, the 9 worlds that the tree of life represents, including the underworld, which is Nilfheim, the earth, Midgard, and the realm of the gods, which is Asgard. The Yggdrasil is associated with both life and death. It acts as a gallows that the god Odin hangs himself from in order to gain mystical knowledge, and it is said to be the source of new life after Ragnarok, which was Doomsday, the catastrophic final war of the gods. And the interesting thing about the 9 worlds is they all represent different ideologies that are all connected in some way. And that's why I want to make sure that at some point I get to cover this on one of these Vault series, because I just think it's interesting. And more importantly, when you have people who are practicing and hold these types of beliefs, you have to take it as serious as any other religion, whether they're Catholic or they're Jewish or they're Christian. Just because it's not a more heightened socialite of a religion that is a norm, you still have to take it serious in the aspects of what these people believe and mentally in their head what they feel their behavior and their offerings to the gods is going to bring them in real life, whether you feel it's
these guys weren't studying at Purdue under Professor, what's his name,
Turcos,
the mystery professor, forget his name.
Yeah,
they weren't studying this shit. They read shit online. They think that they know what they're doing. But I did want to point out that number 9, the 9 planets. Well, you know what? This is significant in all things. Like just keep track of the numbers here. I don't really buy into the numerology stuff. I just think you can get whatever you want. But when there are stories and when they include numbers, that's important. So we have 9 planets, and we also have Odin hung on the tree for 9 days. So just consider that and see if we can find 9s in this crime. I've been trying to look for that too. Like as far as the sticks, I don't believe that I think there's less than 9 sticks. But if you guys, I don't know, I'd love to hear. You guys could.
Well, we haven't even gone over yet the imagery of there are things significant at the crime scene, just in the small imagery that we do have from the leaked crime scenes, where it can be interpreted that there were other things placed in specific positions.
True.
That were not on the girls, but were within the scene itself that you have, it's, you know, it's kind of, you know, one of those things that make you go, is this really part of the photography of the ground itself, or are we looking at things that were placed for significant reasons? And that's where I feel when we talk about casting, you know, casting is kind of the prerequisite that's required before a ritual, where they kind of go out and they say, okay, this is where we're going to perform the ritual. This is going to be where the blot takes place. There's some sacred things that are done to basically prep the scene. And from the crime scene point of the day, when we're talking about, we've got unidentified geofencing cell phones moving into the crime scene area in advance, hours before. And, you know, we only have the geofencing from that day. We don't know if perpetrators went out there in advance and chose this location, knowing that this would be, and we can get into all of the connectors of Libby's Facebook posts, Libby's Instagram posts, Snapchat photos of her posting imagery from the trails. It was very well known that Libby frequented the trails. So was this a very easy targeted luring spot to get the girls to come to? And in advance, they basically scoped out where they could perform all of this in a reasonable amount of time, even if it meant removing the victims from the area and then bringing them back. That is all open. That's all open for speculation, but it can't be disregarded as far as I'm concerned. There's too many. It's just like you can't disregard the state and all of the effery that happened in this case. You just can't chalk it up to coincidence. So Quester, on this segment alone about the realm of the gods, the life and the death, the gallows, and to gain the mystical knowledge. Do you have anything to add during this slide?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. The whole idea of the tree of life is the link between all above and all below. And that's what you've got to get into to get the knowledge.
Cool. That was a good question, Doop-de-doo. I think what we might all three have our own opinion on this. So, Doop-de-doop asked, wait, do we think that the branch they said was cut from a tool? Do we think that was brought from somewhere else because they've scoped the place out ahead of time? I'm going to go with yes, simply because we do have photographs posted by Brad Holder, a suspect in this case, of Patrick Westfall using an electric saw to cut runes. And the photograph it states cutting runes. So could those items have been pre-planted or brought to the scene? Absolutely. And that would really be the only way that it makes sense. And at the end of the day, it's not just the defense who is stating that there were sticks at the scene that appeared to be man-made, cut by a tool. The state also agreed with that. And it wasn't, and the stick that had these tool markings wasn't something that would need to be lugged to the scene. It is something that could have been carried in the dark of night. It's something that could have been carried under a coat. And until we ever see the true actual crime scene photos, we don't know how many of these sticks had those types of tool markings. The angle of the photos that we do have, we're not seeing end-to-end images of the sticks. We can see one end or another, but they're not close up and personal. And from my understanding, photography taken at the crime scene by multiple different crime scene investigators was elaborate. Andrea Burkhart described in her live during that portion of the trial that these were fantastic photographs that were taken. And there's a way that the court could allow certain images to be released without providing us the derogatory images of the victims. But the sticks are important.
Is there any way that you can get it so that my camera is showing? Because I can show you guys how small one of these little saws looks like, and because they could have brought one to the crime scene. I have to put the battery in if I want it to run, and I can show you what it sounds like too and how loud it is.
Do you see the ability on your screen where you can share?
Yes, just one moment. I'm getting the battery.
If you can share your screen, then yes, you can show the tool.
Or I got my camera, so I'll just do the camera. Just give me one sec. Sorry, I was going outside the shed. What'd you say?
So I believe Saker, Saker, make a battery one, don't they?
Craftsman is what I've got right here. I've got a couple different electric ones. I was using them because we had a massive ice storm earlier this year, and I had to break down a bunch of sticks. All right, here we go.
Keith, I absolutely agree with you. That no one batted an eye when the John Benet Ramsey pics were released, but now it's a huge problem, and people just have morbid curiosity with this case. I don't get it. And the thing is, it's not even morbid curiosity. That's the least of what these photos depict, because this crime scene is not morbid. There is a tremendous lack of blood. There's a tremendous lack of with the crime scene photos that have been leaked. Here, let me.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. So this is mine. I have small hands. Just remember. This is. Sorry. Oh, it's yeah. Anyways, the camera's mirrored for some reason, but it's my fault. But yeah. So this is how small one can be. This is actually kind of a smaller one. I have another larger one, but here's how loud it can be. I'm gonna kind of just bring it back a little bit more. Here's how loud.
And that's
kind of what it was. Yeah, that's a battery. So yeah.
Now, see, I would think like something like that would be heard from a distance, especially out there in that terrain. But I could definitely see, and we do see Patrick Westphal cutting sticks. And that's the one thing that I keep going back to when it comes to what Amber Holder testified to at the third-party suspect hearing, was that Brad had stated that Patrick Westphal wanted to move on to human sacrifice. And if they're pre-planning something like this, and they're planning on laying the crime scene out and doing all of the things that they wanted this crime scene to replicate, would they have brought the sticks to depict the runes that they wanted to utilize? And my answer to that is yes. That is a that's very highly possibility.
So sorry about the noise, a little bit windy here, but the one thing I want to do is, it just rained for a couple days, so that would simulate conditions of it being early spring snow melt. So I want to cut a stick in front of you guys just to show you how it frays, and then I'm going to cut another one to show you kind of how a dry one would look, so that maybe we can determine, I don't know if there's a little difference, because there is difference in if a stick is saturated, it's going to cut a little differently. So just Quester, you can go on. I will prep this.
Okay. So Quester, do you want to let me see here.
Yes, certainly. I think it'd be worthwhile if you had a look for Saker, Saker, mini chainsaw. And that's got it's a chainsaw hand, about 6-inch blade. You ever look at that and see just how easy that would be to take it to site and use it?
Yeah. But I mean, what is your belief on, would they have done that at the scene, or would they have done it prior to and brought the items out there in advance?
Logically, it would be more sense to do it away, because you don't know what sort of trees are there, and we don't even know what sort of wood this cut piece of wood is. So it's very hard to say, but logically, if you wanted a special type of wood, you'd take it with you to make sure you've got it, wouldn't you?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, they could have went out there. I mean, we've got this post by Holder on February 5th. I mean, it would have taken maybe 1 or 2 trips out there. And I find it ironic that you've got Brad Holder stating that there was a disagreement and argument by water where the relationship between the two of them fell apart. Then you have Patrick Westphal in a personal interview where you see his face and his mouth moving, where he claims the argument took place in his home because he found out that Brad Holder went to a Christian church. Now, from everything that I'm researching and everything that you can get your hands on when it comes to Brad Holder, and you have him publicly stating and naming Patrick Westphal as his replacement, the depiction that Patrick Westphal gives the public is that he was the head honcho, he was the man in charge. But the only person that you see really truly running the show and forthright coming out and stating or providing us with information about how in depth he believes in this religion, that makes me disbelieve Patrick Westphal. That Patrick Westphal is downplaying who Brad Holder was in this group or tribe of people. And in all actuality, it was Brad Holder who was literally the leader of this kindred or this tribe and was calling the shots. And I don't believe the Christianity church thing was a real argument that took place. Now, when you put them in the crime scene location itself, and things are being done or laid out, or and to be honest, they're probably working in the cover of darkness, setting this up. Maybe that's where the argument took place, that their interpretation of what they wanted the crime scene to say. And we haven't even yet touched base on the why these two girls, why the connections that are formed outside of just this religion base alone. We're talking, you've got Brad Holder, who is a Mason, who's connected to as Nick McClelland there. And then you've got, weeks and months apart of different people turning others in. And at this point in time in February, March, April, May of 2017, none of us truly know what the real imagery was at the crime scene. Yet you've got Brad Holder being considered a serious suspect, the connection with his son dating Abby. Then out of nowhere, you've got this person who's almost 3 hours away down in Rushville, whose sisters are not only contacting law enforcement and not getting a response, then actually get in a vehicle and drive to Delphi to confront law enforcement to say, hey, my brother, my blood is very likely involved in this crime. And then you've got Murphy, Click, and Ferenczi doing investigative work that, lo and behold, connect this man to Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal. I mean, how many niches in a stick do you need before you say, okay, signed, sealed, and delivered, these are the perpetrators in this crime? that's kind of where I'm at. But I'll be honest, I can say that same thing when it comes to Ron Logan. I can say that same thing when it comes to Keegan Klein. The perpetual seriousness of every single aspect of this case and the perpetrators and the reasoning and scenario behind it they all run deep, and you can't ignore them. Go ahead, Fungi. What do you got?
Oh yeah. So I've gathered sticks. And I found a few that seem to be pretty aged. And I'm just gonna cut them and show what they kind of look like afterward, and if they splinter or not, and that, in terms of that kind of thing. So one thing to note is with like older wood like this, it gets really light. You can kind of tell. I mean, it's really whereas these are all from cherry trees. So this one's actually a little bit better, but still. And then this one, I believe this one's the more saturated one. So I'm just gonna cut them real quick. And oh yeah, and then I have a dry dowel, so that we can just see the difference. So just give me one sec. I'm gonna turn off my camera. And here's what it sounds like.
Okay. Turn your camera back on. Your camera went off. Your camera went off. Turn your camera back on so we can see it.
Yeah, here. Let me not dox myself here. All right. Apologies for the noise in advance. Sorry. Sorry, I'm holding my camera with one hand. Wait. I can do this. I can figure this out. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. Knew this would come in handy someday. All right. There's one. This one is really old, oversaturated.
Did that give you a really clean cut, like a straight edge, or was there splinters on the end?
This is I mean, it's somewhat not as much resistance as I expected actually, but the main thing is I'm going to show you guys the cross sections afterward to maybe see if we can be able to tell anything by what we see in the pictures, if you can see the pictures. So here's a more dry one. So this one's more dry, and see how it's got that outer, sort of the outer different pigment. Yeah. So we can. Another thing the reason I'm showing you this is we can tell the age of sticks by how broken down they are. So obviously this one's older. This one came down in the ice storm. This one's been down for years. So we might be able to tell something based on that. The presence of lichen does not necessarily indicate the age of the stick in terms of if it's been on the ground for a while. Actually, a lot of lichen will actually just appear while it's still living. So just keep that in mind. So now let's just do my wooden dowel. This one's super dry. It's been inside the entire time. I used it for my chickens a while back. Here we go. So, wow, yeah, it did have a little more fraying on it. Oops, sorry, it's back. There we go. Yeah, so now we're done with the stick experiment. That was fun.
Fungi?
Yes.
Yeah.
Before you move on,
yes.
Can you cut one of the large ones quickly?
Yeah, sure. How, like, Here, let me get this one. Like this one? Does this one do?
Yep. Never listen to
All
the
right.
sound it makes.
All right, yeah, let's do it. They can happen
Right.
fast, man.
Yep, that's
See that,
part of
that inside in there?
the sound it
That
makes.
mush?
Yep.
Oh,
The
that
sound
mush
it
in there, that's
makes
fungal rot.
could be the sound it makes could be mistaken for a scream, couldn't it?
Huh, that's true. Let me go do it over here and see if it still sounds like that for you guys. I just, because it would be from a distance, wouldn't it? So, one sec. All right, experiment. There we go. There you go, done.
The high pitched part could be mistaken for a scream.
Definitely, that's actually a really good point. All right, I'm done with the weird wood experiments for today.
I love it.
Sorry about that. I know, no, it was kind of off the cuff there. I know we didn't plan on that, but all right.
Fig says literally, I thought someone cutting wood was a person screaming literally yesterday. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Goodbye, Nichols. All right, everything has been thrown outside. We're good now. All right.
Okay, so let's go to here.
Oh, shit, I gotta turn this in.
The next one, I think, is a depiction. Okay, let's read this one. Obviously, the new Gothi could not be the sacrifice, thus a surrogate would be needed. A willing, submissive surrogate would be preferred because it would be a nod to self-sacrifice, which in historical times, human sacrifice would be somewhat considered voluntary. So they would be preferred because it would be a nod to self-sacrifice. Willing would be unlikely, but could be manipulated. Hence, the luring the girls to arrive willingly, which would equal voluntarily. Whether they were being manipulated and being lured to the scene, unbeknownst to their fate, getting them to show up in the minds of these perpetrators, if we're going with this type of scenario of a crime scene, they can manipulate it like they've been manipulating everything about their belief system. That would work for them. The girls showed up willingly. We got them to come out. Here they are. There was no forcefulness involved. Consider the film The Wicker Man, wherein the policeman was manipulated into coming voluntarily. Oh, I gotta take the bottom comment off so I can read the whole thing here. Manipulated into coming voluntarily, albeit without him knowing the nefarious goal. This could explain why one of the girls wanted to go to the trails. She was catfished into coming willingly. That absolutely 1,000,000% fits the narrative of this crime and why the girls were there that day with the communications that we're aware of on the phone with a catfishing account. It all aligns. Any follow-up, guys?
Not from me.
Okay.
No.
Lester, are you muted? Is he muted?
No, I'm not muted.
Okay.
No follow-up on that. I think it speaks for itself.
So that falls into a line with when we get into the actual crime scene itself. Thus, there was the self-sacrifice to represent the self-sacrifice of Odin and to call to Odin for sacred knowledge. This sacrifice had to represent the new Gothi, hence the positioning, the stance of the Hierophant, reaching out to the world tree for connection, seeking the imparting of godly knowledge. So communion, I'm cutting myself off again reading this. So the communion, let me take this off here. So the communion with Odin established via the manipulated self-sacrifice. So if you take Libby's body positions, we're not ignoring the sticks, but her body position itself, where I guess the way that I see this, and you guys can give your own analogy, but the way that I see this is that I know a lot of people have tried to incorporate the sticks and the placement of the sticks and their meaning as all incumbents of the positioning of the body. I can see this being in layers. The first layer being the body itself is a representation of what the perpetrators were signifying as an offering to the gods. And then if you look at the sticks as a separate layer, it would almost be as a scripture on top of the body placement. They're using runes and they're using bind runes to facilitate a statement or a language emphasizing what the runes mean as a scripture on top of the body that is embellishing the reaching out towards the life tree, the offering to Odin, the significance of knowledge, and basically offering for the requests, what they're wanting out of this sacrifice. So I look at the body as the basis, the original acknowledgement that we are sacrificing, we are reaching out to Odin for the knowledge. And instead of just looking at the sticks as being placed on the bodies, the sticks are representing a signature, a scripture on top of the body, compiling an overall theme of what just Libby herself represents at this scene. That's the way that I can interpret it. There's other ways that it's also interpreted, and we'll get into that in another segment. But for today, that's how I see it. Quester, do you want to give your opinion?
Yeah, as you said, the raised arm is reaching out to the tree, which is the quest for knowledge from all above. But also the other arm is pointing to the ground, or would have been if had that person been standing, which is again, it's mimicking the link that the tree is, as above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
So it's further mimicry from the Odin point of view and the wish for knowledge, not just the tree, but also the positioning of the body. Yeah.
So do you think that it's a reference as Libby? I mean, is it possible that they're using Libby's body, not the sticks, but the body placement itself as a connecting line from life to death, like going from the life tree, from her left arm being extended upward, touching the base of the tree, because the tree that they chose, we do know that she was placed there. That's not where she fell. She was drugged there, and she was staged there in this position. And when you see the leaked crime scene, it's really not plausible to think that a person would have grabbed her by the arm and pulled her, and that the double base tree trunk would have gotten in the way. This was more of a placement, a significant layout of her body. Do you think that this has special meaning? I know that you said that it does, but do you think this is like a connector, like the life tree through Libby to death and full knowledge from top to bottom?
Certainly. If you wish to place a body in a position to demonstrate that link, you couldn't get much better than to put it in a position like that.
That's true.
Yeah. You've got the pictures of the Hierophant card that I sent you, and it's almost a carbon copy of those positions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
With the Hierophant, you have to remember that the Hierophant card, you've got to change it around. and imagine the Hierophant card is drawn to represent this, not this has been done to represent the Hierophant. Follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
This came first. It goes way back into all sorts of beliefs and religions. But this is a very important positioning.
Fungi, do you have an opinion about the positioning of Libby?
I mean, I completely agree with your you guys' assessment. Personally, I'm not as familiar with the, I guess, I don't know how else to describe it, like these sort of more occult symbols like that. So I mean, I definitely don't want to encroach into a territory where I'm not very comfortable with it, but I do believe that because of the way that so many other things at this scene were just very meticulously done, like from the sticks, from the amount of blood, from it just I don't feel like, especially things with Libby, I don't think anything on her was coincidental, or I think everything about her was purposeful. Abby's, see, like I said last time, it just seems a little bit more sloppy because we have kind of some leaves. We have on top of part of her, one of her shoulders kind of just covered by a large leaf, and we don't see any of that with Libby. We also have an oak leaf that is on kind of the sticks where they all intersect on Abby. So I just think that the juxtaposition with both of them, it tells me that there's meaning. There's absolutely, definitely meaning in basically in the position and everything else. Like I don't know how to interpret it necessarily.
Would you think it's possible that
because we're trying? That's all we can do is play with the interpretation.
What were you saying, Quester?
Go ahead, Quester.
What do you think of the possibility that these two bodies were positioned and dressed by two different people? Libby by someone who was more practiced, and Abby by someone who wasn't.
That did occur to me when Amy was kind of proposing her theory. I think that's a really good theory, because I think that the presence of having two girls, I mean, I obviously I will go down swinging saying that more than one person absolutely had to have done this. But I think that if you put it in the context, if you put it in the context though of what you're saying, I think it kind of even more so even aligns with the sort of situation that's going on with Holder and Westfall, at least from what we can see.
Well,
there's really compelling.
So down the road, just a little spoiler alert, going into another perception of the crime scene in a different angle, there is notably a significant difference in the meaning that can be derived from the crime scene itself when it comes to Libby versus Abby, and one being nude and one being dressed. And although Libby appears to be the target, it also can be interpreted that Libby was the what's the word I'm looking for? Trying to remember how it's described, that she's the conductor, that she's the overseer, and she's the connector to all things, and she's the overseer of the real ritual itself. And she's presented in more of a not a godly way, but more of the nudity represents a
purity.
It's more of a yes, more of a purity to the offering to Odin, because clothing might be distasteful to him, and
unblemished.
That's why Libby is nude. It's I've read it also to be interpreted that way as well, that she's more of the purification offering in the crime scene, and her blood, indicative of her wounds, was the blood that was the ceremonial purpose of this ritual. That is why you
know,
see. Go ahead.
To expand, I'm so sorry. To expand on what you said, what you're saying right here, Mickey's headphones made a good point. It could be a way of passing down a Gothi roll, right? And
hey, fungi, you're breaking up quite a bit. You're breaking up quite a bit.
Oh shit! Is it still doing it? Hello?
Yeah,
It's still going.
That's better.
Not now.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I might be my earbuds. Yeah, no. What Miku's headphones said could be a way of passing down the Gothi roll. I think that really goes with you, because if we're the whole situation with Odin in this situation, or in this symbolism, is mimicking his passing of his one position, hangman position, which is what he did to get the knowledge of runes. So I think it's a symbolism of passing on knowledge here. So passing it on to the new Gothi. I'm not sure if that's what you may have been already alluding to that, but
yeah. I mean, again, no one can be right or wrong in this situation, because we just don't know. But there's
it just certainly would make sense.
The undressed and the dressed definitely hold a significance, and especially with Abby, or with Libby's placement at the base of the tree. And out of all of the trees in that area, to choose the one that has the double base, it's symbolic. And as much as you want to say, okay, well, you're all batshit crazy, and looking at it this way, when you put all of the belief systems and the networking in place on how this, also true Norse neo-paganism has manifested itself, you can't discount it. And of course, this is not something that we see in everyday crime scenes, thank goodness, but it's here. And what do we do with it? I mean, and the fact that we have all of these elements and indicators, regardless to how we dissect them and try to explain, with the reasonable amount of knowledge and research, what we're looking at, one way or another, one meaning or another, it's all indicative of a ritualistic, non-secular crime scene. And we'll discuss the crossroads with Rick Allen later, but Quester?
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying for certain that I think that this is like a pagan ritual, or I guess a interpretation of one, or an offering in some way. I'm not saying I know for certain. I'm just saying that there's a lot of indications, and I think it would be wise not to ignore them. But apparently the prosecution did not feel, and the judge did not feel the same way.
And I think maybe a lot of it was how it might have been presented in the courtroom. And it was more of an overview of what they thought they were looking at hypothetically, versus really presenting in a hearing and on the stand. I'm really on the fence, and I have been on the fence with the defense team and their efforts and their failures. And I don't believe it was a lack of work ethic. I believe it was a lack of preparation and knowledge based on the cards that they were handed and when they were handed during the process of preparing for trial. And they focused so much on the Frank's memo, which they should have. However, I feel that they went above and beyond in areas that were unnecessary. Prime example, the pages and pages and pages of detail about the redressing of Abby. And period, point blank, the perpetrator did not redress Abby themselves. Abby dressed herself. Abby was clothed when the wound was inflicted on her neck. Those clothes were not on Libby when Libby's wounds were inflicted, because Libby's blood are not all over those clothes. And if Abby would have been nude in that wound inflicted, trying to dress her, her blood would have been all over those clothes, and it was not. Abby was dressed in Libby's clothes prior to the wound being inflicted. If they would have taken all of those pages and all of that effort to do one man lifting up one arm, pulling down one sleeve, pulling her head through her sweatshirt, except the details and the time that they spent on that part of the Franks memo, if it would have gone into more depth about how realistic this religion and these beliefs are, and put forth how all of the things that we are able to put together ourselves without even having access to discovery would have been a lot more profound in the court and even on appeal. Doesn't mean that it would ever made its way in front of a jury, because no matter what the defense would have presented, Judge Gall was hell-bent on not allowing the defense to put on any kind of defense for their client whatsoever. Hopefully that comes back to bite her in the ass. In this case, is yanked right out from under her, which it should be. But in this situation, there could have been a lot more in-depth detail about how this scenario of the crime scene actually works. And there's more of a nexus to all of this than it is a lone wolf who racked a gun on the south end of the bridge, and that bullet made it 50 yards away without there ever being any kind of an explanation of how the bullet was picked up, put in a pocket, and it fell out. There's so many things that they could have done. Hindsight's 2020, but to me, that's how I see it. Next up, now we're going to talk about the runes that we see. The Hegel is a person adopting a position of or wearing the Hegel is a receiver as well as a transmitter. Therefore, placing the Hegel on the surrogate will declare the intent of the sacrifice to be a communication of sacred information between Odin and the Gothi present, which again reiterates the position of Libby, the communicator from the life tree to the earth to the underworld. She's representing the communicator. Again, ignoring the sticks. We're looking at her body placement. In my opinion, specifically, that's what she represents. Number two, the con. This would support the Hegel, a binding, a reinforcing that the goal is receiving the knowledge. Pain and suffering goes hand in hand with the con, which might explain the somewhat frenzied look of the wounds inflicted. It could be that clothing was removed because there was a wish to remove attire not suitable for Odin's pleasure, or even to cause the sacrifice further pain and suffering. Quester, elaborate.
Right. The further pain and suffering, you could think of young girl surrounded by men and she's stripped. Now that will cause mental pain and suffering, wouldn't it?
Yes.
That is one aspect that it could be. But I think it's more than likely the previous one, that the clothing was removed because it wasn't suitable. The naked person is far more, shall we say, clean than the dressed person, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it'd be more for the Odin's acceptance than to be dressed in, I don't know, modern girls' clothes. The thing with the Hegel...
There's another S. Please go. You're good. You're good.
Go on.
The thing with the that what you're saying is that with that emotions are really important. So like the emotions of the person who's doing this, what they want, but also the emotions that they're getting out from the victim. So one of the things, it might not be necessarily the physical suffering of the girls that they were trying to elicit. It might have been the fear itself. That because the stronger the emotions, the more powerful in some of these offerings it can be interpreted as being.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Definitely, yeah.
And so with the Hegel and the con rune,
well, first of all, the Hegel. The picture you've got there, which is the old style Hegel. Yeah. And that, as you may know, the more modern one is the asterisk. If you look at the picture of the sticks on Libby, could you just go back to that one?
Mm-hmm.
Right. You can clearly see there's an H there. Yeah?
With the big trunk tree.
No, ignore the big one. The two vertical and the horizontal one.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
They form an H. Now, if you now look at the one where the big trunk, the yellow line, and the one crossing it, you've got the asterisk.
Mm-hmm. That's
so you have you've got that Hegel in both representations joined together. You've got
there's
a bind rune
that
there.
Hidden asterisk on. There's that asterisk on the left of the Abbey that isn't in the exhibit too. That looks exactly like that. It's that, and there's blood underneath it.
That's correct.
Yeah, that is. Yes, and that's one that's not really been discussed or presented, and we'll get into that because I have it, and your diagram pointed it out perfectly. So if you're standing at the crime scene and you're standing at above Abby's head, looking down at her head's closest to you, her feet are closer to the water. To the right of that, there is another set of sticks that appear to be staged in that asterisk rune style depiction. And a lot of people haven't picked up on that. And I don't think I would have too until Fungi that you pointed it out. But there's so many symbolisms around this crime scene. I just wonder what was missed when I'm sure the crime scene investigators were focusing on the victims and the immediate crime scene. But when you get into looking at this crime overall, you've got unidentified phones moving into the crime scene hours before the girls even arrive at the trails, and you consider what this possibly all could signify as far as a ritualistic crime scene. They were there early on to do casting, preparation, preparing the land for the sacred symbolic ritual. And do we have markers further out around this crime scene that casts the circle, which is indicative of the sacred space that they would be working in? We just don't know, because we probably won't ever get to see the real crime scene photos unless this case is taken away from Judge Gall.
Well, what I see in those sticks is a bind rune.
Mm-hmm.
You have the corn, which is then bound to two versions of the Hegel, both the ancient version and the modern version. That is an incredibly strong bind rune.
And can you explain what the two runes combined as a bind rune mean?
But it's essentially, they mean what all the rest of it is saying. The communication with Odin, the request for information, the suffering, the sacrifice. It's all there reinforced in those runes. But the runes are a message as well. They're sort of, normally it's an unnecessary message, but bear in mind, if this was a surrogate, it would have to be reinforced that the request is not being made by the surrogate, but the surrogate is doing it on behalf of someone. And this bind rune could be doing that.
And also, as far as like the purification and the nudity of Libby, I've always thought when I look at, I mean, even though I feel the photos from the leaked crime scene photos are whitewashed, I feel that what we do see blood-wise on Libby is on her hands and on her neck, and then it's more prominent on her face in the upward direction as if she was inverted. But to me, her hands and her throat appear to have been wiped. Like nothing like you would ever think someone who had those types of injuries. I mean, I think I've shown on here before the closest that I can get to a real crime scene photo of someone who has had that severe wounds on their neck was Nicole Brown Simpson from the OJ case. And I mean, the massive amount of blood is incredible. And when you're thinking of presenting an offering or a communication pleasable to Odin, wiping the blood away would be indicative of a clean offering, a purified offering. That kind of, to me, also doubles down on the fact that it was done. This was set up and done intentionally, because I mean, I'm sure most of the people in the chat have seen the crime scene photos that were leaked. And I personally feel like if you were to take a child who had a mouthful of like tomato juice and just open their mouth and let it pour, and you took some sort of a cloth or even a leaf and wiped it from their face or their neck, you're going to get this swiping. It almost looks like a bib on Libby. And the wounds that she had and the amount of wounds that she had, you would not have that effect. I don't care if she was standing, fell over, and no one's going to convince me that that large pool of blood at the base of this crime scene, where the sticks are obviously staged over top of, when the religious aspect of this crime scene, they believe it does explain that when you have a blood pool such as that, and then you put runes over top of it, it's an offering to the earth. It's an offering of the blood to nature. And that could very well be where an altar was set up, where there was blood collection, which would explain the lack of blood, but what blood was left over was wiped away to offer a purified sacrifice such as Libby and her body placement with the sticks. Sorry, that's one of my interpretations of this.
Yeah, one thing to remember is that it's, like I said before, a lot of things were very deliberate and meticulous in the positioning and staging of this crime scene. But one thing that we do know is that blood is such an powerful thing in these offerings. Even if it was just animal blood, that kind of thing, that you wouldn't waste it. You wouldn't just put it random places. You wouldn't just dump it. You wouldn't just let it go. Where it is very.
You wouldn't waste it. You wouldn't waste.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Yeah, you wouldn't just do it for shits and giggles is all I'm saying.
Chester 22 asks, how many times was Libby stabbed? Did the attack seem personal, like it was someone close to her? In this theory, because I can see it multiple different ways, and I still, even after all of the things we've discussed in the series, I'm still not sold on one theory or another. The ones that we're discussing are all very plausible. With Libby, I see it being not a personal attack. I see it being a deliberate attack for the purpose of it being a blood sacrifice.
Your microphone's kind of fucking up, just an FYI.
Sorry. Is that better?
It's okay. No, oh, yeah, that seems a little better.
I don't see this being a deliberate personal attack. If in this scenario, in this theory, if this was a sacrifice, a ceremony.
You're breaking up to me as well, Amy.
Oh no! It is raining outside. Is this better?
That's better.
Just don't move at all.
Okay. So Chester 22 asked, how many times was Libby stabbed? Did the attack seem personal, like it was someone close to her? In this theory,
twice, and wasn't right. Yeah.
No, she was cut. She was cut in 4 to 5 different places. There is one cut that
the first one was really sloppy, and then the second one was more deliberate.
She had cuts on both sides of her neck. All of the cuts were, for the most part, vertical from top to bottom, which is indicative of draining the blood from a hunt, from a deer, from a lamb, a sheep, to drain the blood quickly, or to drain the blood into a gauntlet or a bowl for the purposes of a sacrifice. I firmly believe that Libby's attacker cut her facing her. It wasn't done from behind like a throat cutting, but there was one cut that had a secondary cut that intersected it, and it was described almost as an X. That one cut, they couldn't tell if it was one cut or if it was one cut and they cut it overlapping that one to make it deeper. So in this scenario, if we're talking sacrifice, a religious ceremony, to me, this could very well be seen as we are going to deliberately get the job done and make these incisions and drain the blood as quickly as possible and in a direct manner. I mean, they're not stabbing furiously. They're not cutting at the chest or any other part of the body. They're cutting directly into an artery, which anybody that has hunted or, dressed a deer would know where to cut and drain blood in a very conservative fashion. That's kind of how I think that this could have gone down. Yet in other scenarios, you could see it a different way. But the wounds on Libby in this scenario are distinct and not personal, but they are implicable to draining and collecting the blood and bringing her to incapacitation as quickly as possible. That's just my opinion.
Well, with how deliberate everything else seemed, for me, it seems like that first one was sort of a mistake almost, or like someone who hasn't done this before, and then the other person's like, no, this is how you do it.
Possibly.
Like, this is the right way. That's what kind of screamed to me in terms of just juxtapositioned with all the other very deliberate, very careful stuff. I mean, it makes sense that would be the part that someone's gonna, maybe their mind will lapse and they don't remember how someone told them to do it, or maybe that part wasn't ever discussed because of just how gruesome it is. It wasn't something that person thought about. I don't know. It's just a theory. I mean, definitely, maybe it was something else.
It's all really a theory. I mean, it's all we have That's all we can do right now during this downtime in between the guilty verdict and the appeal, is to take the information that we have, and if we want to continue to discuss this case, all we're left with is speculation and theories and trying to, digest what information that we have. And next week what we present might have a completely different background or mythology behind it. And if for whatever reason people disagree, that's fine. And we're not here to be the end all be all of the case. We're here for discussion and to hopefully maybe have attorneys who will be participating in Rick's case in the future take some of this information and go, turn on a light bulb, like, oh my gosh, we never thought of it this way. Or this is a great way for us to articulate, and it's crowdsourcing. Public opinion is very powerful, and thoughts and ideas and critical thinking really coming together make all the difference in the world. And that's all we're trying to do here. And it just so happens that we're taking the time to put it all into a format to present for everyone else, so they don't have to do it. They can show up and listen, watch, take away what they feel is quality information and disregard the rest. So, Foster?
Yeah. It strikes me, if you decide that the positioning of Libby was precise and meaningful, and that the sticks placed upon her was precise and meaningful, why should you then decide that the cutting was not? The first two would say, this is a person who knows what they're doing. They're taking it calmly and methodically. Why would they go reckless on that final important part? They wouldn't really, would they?
No, because the incisions and the wounds themselves would be the initial part of what their plan was to begin with. Because you don't get the body placement, you don't get the staging, and you don't get the sticks without the wounds being there first and her being incapacitated. That had to come first.
And if after having done the cuts, he's so calm he can place the sticks and the girl precisely, then I don't believe he was frenzied when he did the cuts.
Well, I do understand what Fungi is saying about, and and this is where it's hard to separate all of the different theories that we have available to us in this case. Although I think that we've narrowed down, and that's another thing that we'll get into when we get into Fungi's her report and document that she provided on her research years prior to this case even being a case. She's put together somewhat of a timeline of events of how all of this played out. And when you get into the different scenarios of theories, the same names all come up. They interject, they cross a line from Keegan Kline to Ron Logan to Brad Holder to Patrick Westfall and possibly even Brad Weber. Not the person himself, but the property. When we get into all of the different relatives and connections and the marriages, when we get into all of that, you're going to see like, holy crap, this is a shit show of information that, if presented,
Tentacles.
It's tentacles. Absolutely. That word, that is one thing that law enforcement with Doug Carter got right. And that is that word, tentacles. And when you look at where people lived, their familiarity with different aspects of this case, it is undeniable. All of these things all commingle. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Getting into Abby. After everything that we've discussed with the sacrifice, we are now left with, but there were two girls. They could not be separated without the second one seeing the perps. Hence, the second could not be let free. One would assume that the second one was then fooled into following along, as the state were quite adamant that there were no signs of struggles anywhere. And the video shows no signs of struggle, fear, or distress. What then to do with the second when the bloat is underway and the time of sacrifice arrived? The second could not be left to talk, but murder for murder's sake would taint the bloat. Answer, find a reason to sacrifice the second one too. That leaves us with this. The self-sacrifice of Odin, what better way to use the second than to mimic the actual self-sacrifice via the hanged man pose. But this sacrifice had to be shown to be separate, oblique allied to the other sacrifice to give the second sacrifice justification in itself. Since the main goal only required one sacrifice, the solution lay in reversing the hanged man position, thereby converting it to a strong message. Again, by surrogate, this could be a link to the allegations of one mother mixing race by dating a non-white, a very serious breach of the tribe's code, a code having arisen via the adoption of white supremacy ideals. Lester, I'll let you take that on.
This is just a suggestion. The hanged man upright mimics the self-sacrifice by Odin. Therefore, it will bond or bind with the sacrifice, the first person's sacrifice. However, as it says here, you only needed the one sacrifice. The second one is superfluous. So you've got to find a separate justification for that second sacrifice. Now, the hangman reversed changes the story. It changes it to being sort of a personal message. Now, sometimes it is about the person hanged, but more commonly, it is a message to someone linked to the hanged person. And if you look at the way that Abby was laid out, it is definitely the hanged man position. The legs in the right position, the elbows and shoulders are in the right position. The only thing that is different is that if I remember right, Abby's hands were on her chest, not behind her back. That's correct, isn't it, Abby? Amy?
Yes. Her hands were in what you would consider like a fighter's position. And that kind of aligns with she was held down. Like the person may have straddled her and her arms would have been upright with her fists underneath of her chin. And she was held and, you know, and her elbows were out. So if you take your fists and you put them under your chin and you put your elbows out, that's how she's positioned and that's how she was found. And they're not, they're not behind her back. But it mimics the hangman image.
It does. They've still got the same positions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but what color was the her top? Was it blue?
It was blue or black. It was a sweatshirt. It did not have pockets.
I think you're right. It was black.
It was black. Right, so that doesn't fit in with the.
Yeah,
if it had been
wrong.
blue, that would have been another signal.
I thought it was blue. Yeah, because that's a color for Odin.
Yeah.
Black is the color for. I mean, obviously, death.
But if you're looking,
black is, yeah.
I guess we can hypothetically trying to put your get yourself in the mind of the perpetrators here. They are, they're manipulating the situation and luring the girls out there. They're left with what they have to work with. And if if Abby is the secondary sacrifice and they're going to incorporate her by using the reverse hangman image, they're going to take what works. And the closest thing to the blue would be the black sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Otherwise, because we know, I mean, you don't have to be a crime scene investigator expert or a blood expert to understand that both girls, whether it be at the same time or individually, both girls were stripped of their clothes. Whether they took them off themselves, were ordered to take the clothes off. Abby had to have dressed herself because her clothes did not have, the clothes had to have been removed from Libby first and then put back on Abby. And it does not seem plausible that if Abby is not injured yet, which she couldn't have been when the clothes were put on her because of the blood. There's no blood saturating the front of her clothes. There's no blood of Libby saturating her clothes. It was, I believe she was held down in this position, made to be still, and allowed the wound to take effect. And then the sticks and her body placement were done after the fact. That's what I see. And if you disagree, that's okay. But I would say that, when you're having to adjust to the situation at hand, I can't imagine, regardless to who the perpetrators were and what the reasoning was behind this whole entire crime, I can't imagine that they would have ever expected Libby by herself to show up alone. They had to have been anticipating her being with someone.
The other thing to note is, again, the sticks. You can see obviously slight difference. The same patterns as on Libby. The two hay girls and the corn. I'm not worried about the slight differences because sticks move. They roll down, gravity pulls them and so on. But it's there. The asterisk, the H and the corn are all there in the same arrangement, the same bind rune. You can see it, can't you, Anne? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think and I think a lot of people are mistaking, the different sizes of the sticks as being significant, and we're suggesting that maybe the size of the sticks aren't indicative of what the message was overall. Some of the sticks were brought there, significant ones that they had cut themselves, then incorporated the sticks that were in the area, especially the large tree branch that was on Libby. But the overall effect is exactly the same on both girls. And I think that we can reasonably say the sizing of the sticks doesn't matter. It's the placement.
Definitely, it's the placement. And perhaps if we'd known, it might be the type of wood that was used.
And that's where Fungi comes in. she's the tree girl. She's the nature girl. She knows. And I know that
I had a time machine.
And I mean, going further ahead of what's to come, there's information that we do have that Anna Williams actually knew Patrick Westfall. And they're, digging into different things. It's reasonable to think that Anna had some communication with members of this crowd of people who had these adopted beliefs, but was also dating outside of that group. And, it's all encumbrance to the theory. That's all.
The really large branch, Old Mort New Mort asked if anyone knows if it was cut or broken. I believe that it was a small fallen tree. If you look at the official exhibit with the kind of pale blue background, that one, you can kind of see the full shape of it, and it definitely looks like at the one end it has like it's kind of the base of the trunk. So that's what I strongly believe in that depicts.
Okay. So, and finally, to the last slide, this time there was no gain in or necessity to leave the sacrifice naked. After the deed was done, indeed, to the contrary, this sacrifice could be treated with and granted a degree of respect. The blood of at least one sacrifice would provide the blot offering. And that's where we end off today. So
I guess my only question at that point is, where is Abby's blood then?
well, I guess, I mean, we won't, the lack of blood, I think, was always a big topic of everyone that was at the trial who's seen the photographs. And I would assume that there were photographs taken once the victims were removed. And if Abby was held down and in one place, close to the ground, as you know, she was on the ground, it's plausible that the blood was absorbed into the earth. I do believe that the back of her sweatshirt and the hoodie that she had on was somewhat saturated. So for her, you know, the fact that she could have been held down in the same place, it all would have been absorbed right there behind her head, her neck, and her shoulders. But in Libby's case, we know that she was not, those wounds weren't inflicted where she was found. And it's up for debate. It's really up for debate. But the lack of blood on Libby and the wounds that she had, especially if you're talking about an individual who's standing up and your blood is pumping, your heart is racing out of fear, you can't tell me that wasn't happening. The amount of blood splatter that we would have expected to see, in my personal opinion, if her hands immediately went to her neck to stop any kind of blood flow, and then she was to support herself on that tree, we would have seen a lot more blood there while she's standing upright than we would have seen at the bottom, at the foot of the crime scene, where both girls' legs inadvertently came into that V shape. If she would have been tipped over and held, and the blood would have drained at a makeshift altar. And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying if we are going to articulate in a reasonable sense of what this crime scene is showing us, that does fall into what makes sense.
Redacted doing redacted. They both had marks on the bottom, chin straight and horizontal. That could be the lip of a bowl. I don't know. Maybe they saved Abby's blood for something else, for another one. I don't know. I mean, the other thought I have is that because everything was, once again, so meticulous, having unnecessary blood there, blood that you don't want for this ritual, may have also been another purposeful thing. Maybe that was a keep it clean of hurt, you know, just that kind of thing. I don't know.
There's a lot of ways. Go ahead.
I just want to say I really like talking to you guys in chat. This is fun. That's all.
Final words, Quester?
Yeah, I think one of the main things you have to take away from what we've done so far is, does this look as if it could all have happened just by accident? The things all fell into place. Her arm accidentally pointed towards a tree. The wood fell and landed in the same patterns on both of them. The F was an accident and got on the tree. Is everything just pure coincidence? If your answer to that is no, and I feel that's the only answer you can say is no, it is not coincidence, then you are left with it's done by somebody who knew what they were doing. Now, I believe that the defense messed up in their argument on this by trying to say, look, this was Patrick and whoever who did it. They should have done it from the other side, saying they should have said, look, Richard could not have done that. There is had no link whatsoever with this religion. He's not looked up anything.
Yeah.
He knew nothing about it. And it would then become exculpatory. And it could not have been excluded then, could it?
No.
Everything here says, sorry, Richard, you could not have done this. You couldn't have planned this. You couldn't have thought it out. And you certainly couldn't have done it all by yourself.
Especially in the mannerism in which the state presented. They never gave us any kind of an illusion or idea of preparation leading up to a crime like this on Richard Allen's part. There was no indicators. There was no previous, misbehavior or foul interests on his part. And they just wanted you to believe that he left his mother's one day and stopped and got a 6-pack of beer and drank 3 and then did all of this. And nothing before it and nothing after. No indicators before or after. That is so outside what is acceptable in a situation like this that it's really almost laughable that they were able, with the help of Judge Gall, to present this type of a narrative in front of a jury and get away with it. It's very laughable and it's sickening and it's sad. But I've always said, this has been about self-preservation. Hang a man that we don't know, that we have no obligation to protect or to give a shit about his life, his future, his family, any and all of the above. It's about self-preservation, and we need this case to go away because the tentacles are attached to so many people in power. And you've got your people in power, and then you have your peons. So when people want to believe that something like this couldn't be pulled over a whole department's eyes, pulling the wool over their eyes, there's so much information about this case that was probably never revealed to your lower law enforcement entities. They were just doing what they were told. They were believing what they were told. And the orchestration of the rest of it was pulled over their eyes like they attempted to pull over the public's eyes until the ruse was up. And then when the ruse was up and they couldn't sweep this under the rug, they then found a patsy and the whole narrative changed. And for some people who have followed this case from the beginning, they were gullible enough to buy it. They were there's people out here who have followed this case from the beginning, people that I communicated with and talked to early on, who had a completely different scenario or idea or concept of what took place in this crime and who was responsible. But the second that Nick McClelland presented this bullshit theory of a lone wolf, all of a sudden, they're on the bandwagon. Everything else that they knew or researched or bought into based on what we know then went out the window. So I believe the same thing was done with the lower levels of law enforcement in this case. They were lied to, they were misguided, they were fed bullshit, or they were withheld information until they made the decision on how they were going to ultimately finish this case. And that was with a patsy 2 weeks before an election, a man who had nothing on anyone. He had no leverage. He had no pointing the finger background to double down on, well, let's talk about a Ron Logan. And just because we don't have information or proof that Ron Logan was a practicing Norse pagan religion fanatic, or was in, we have rumors, but we don't have proof. But that
I mean,
doesn't
in the one report said he had goat heads in his backyard.
He did. Yeah, he had goat heads. And why? And I've always said,
Yeah.
whether he was involved or not, I believe the property was used. The property was the gateway. The property was the entry and the entry and the exit to this crime.
I'd love to know if there's like a large giant oak there near that property or something. I would love to know. I would love to go to that cemetery and see what trees are.
Well, I'll be honest, there's really no trees in the cemetery. The cemetery is flat land. At the back of the cemetery, there's a gate now, but there didn't used to be a gate. It's literally a wooded line. You've got flat land, you have all of the headstones, you have a gravel drive that circles around the cemetery, but when you pull in and you drive to the very back edge, you parked your car and you got out, you've got a flat land, and then immediately the wooded terrain begins. So there's probably all different kinds of trees out there.
But I'm saying, like, if there's like a really, really big oak on Ron Logan's property, I don't know what it would mean, but it would be very interesting to me at all. So I guess what I'm because maybe it symbolizes that land has a connection or meaning in some way, and therefore doing this on that land, I don't know, could have meant something.
Well, and Fungi,
I do know that McCain said that he loved to photograph a big oak, and I believe that it was probably going to be near a field, just because oaks have very large footprints. So, in my opinion, it would be near some open land, but that's just my opinion. Or it would be an opening in the woods.
And you can't even with this whole scenario, as much as in depth as it gets with the crime scene and the symbolism and all of that, we still can't get away from the McCains and their history. You can't get away from the value of the property that they were trying to obtain from the county. When you read Roy West's report, one of the first questions he asks for the investigators to research in this investigation is, who would have benefited from Ron Logan's land? Who wanted access or ownership of Ron Logan's land? You're talking 40 some acres. Ron Logan himself has stated that his land was sacred. Brad Weber and the Sandifords, they all feel the same way. There are so, and we can go on.
Did he use that word, sacred?
I believe so. Yes.
I'd love. Yeah, if you could send me wherever that is, that's interesting.
And what is the opposite of it's desecrated? After the murders, they all were claiming that their property, their land was desecrated by this crime.
That's really interesting wording.
All Eyes says that she has an oak tree that she has a picture of. Email it to me, All Eyes, and I'll get it to Fungi. And
I love you.
All of this, I mean, guys, none of this is. I'm going to emphatically say this is not for entertainment This is not for entertainment purposes only. This is informative discussion. This is us bringing to you all of the things that we feel connect to this crime in one way, shape, or form. And I think that we're going to have multiple ways to present it and discuss it. And it's, it is what it is. And we will see what happens with the case. But this part of the case for me is like crazy interesting. And it's complicated, it's complex, there's layers, and you almost like feel kind of, I feel personally uneducated in this area, and I'm really getting into gaining the knowledge of the symbolic, especially the modern day stuff, and how it's incorporated into the new neo-paganism groups of people, including people like the Vinlanders, which we cannot exclude, which some of the perpetrators in this crime were also a part of. So
alleged perpetrators.
yeah, alleged perpetrators. Yeah.
Bing.
Okay. Again, Quester, final words. I think
You're on mute.
I think he thought he was unmuting and he muted.
Yeah, sorry. What we've got here isn't, look, this guy did it. What we basically presented is a case of exculpatory. There's a good enough argument here that there is a very large nexus, and it should have been allowed into trial. And if it confuses the jury, then so
The
be
issue.
it. Yeah.
Confuses the issue.
If a jury becomes confused, then there's reasonable doubt. Next case.
Let them be. Let them at least hear it.
They should have been allowed to present it, and I wish they would have. I wish they would have presented it in more of a, like, this is, for lack of better terms, this is real shit. This type of religious beliefs do exist, and all they had to have done was pull up all of the social media of these individuals and what they were putting out to the public. I mean, if you're not heavily involved and heavily committed to those beliefs, as grown men, why would you play games and pretend? I mean, they took this stuff serious. As nonsensical to some of us it may be, a human sacrifice, like, really? But then you look at their behavior and you look at how dedicated they were. They're showing up at ceremonies, they're performing rituals, they're creating runes, they're involving their children, as if you are bringing a child up in a Catholic church. They're bringing their children up to believe in this Norse pagan religion, as discontorted as it was, based on the modern day philosophy of it. You can't ignore that. Candy. So Candy's asking, Quester, the 218 call last week left me hanging. Answer in group on Facebook, at least, if not now, please. I'm not sure what she's talking about.
208. 208 phone number, I think she's referring to. We didn't clarify it last week. Do you remember it?
The 208 phone call that Ron Logan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't specify in the search warrant exactly, per foot where he was, but they said that he was in the vicinity of the Monon High Bridge. And then later on that night, his phone pinged in the area of the crime scene.
That's right. And one of the unknown phones was at 207, if I believe. And they reckon it called Ron Logan.
Which would have been, when you're trying to connect all of the pieces to the puzzle, imagine people involved, Ron Logan allowing this to occur on his property, and he's participating to a certain degree, whether he's the one who inflicted the wounds or not. But imagine, are we ready? Are you there? Are the girls there? From a phone in the white vehicle traveling in on the private drive at 208.
Now, if I recall correctly, the unknown phone was within 100 yards of the scene, wasn't it?
Yes.
One football field, guys. And not the fake football that Quester likes.
And there's kind of if my contact relinks me with so I have my Google Earth account with all of the pins on it with where everything is. I was looking up and studying, you know, when you're dealing with a vast crime scene, how to investigate it, and you break it up into 4 different quadrants, and that I was kind of led to that based off you Fungi's information about the overlapping names that we continuously see between, Ron Logan, Brad Holder, all of these things, separating it into 4 quadrants and kind of seeing what's left. And all of those names are indicative to that area. Except for Keegan Klein, who puts himself in the middle of the crime, who is
and knows things,
and is attached technologically via catfishing. So there's that as well. I mean, we could go on. We can go on for forever because there's so much information here. And at this point, I feel just like going back to the very beginning of this crime, I feel the information needed to solve this crime is right here and with what the defense team already has. They just have to learn how to put it in a timeline and understand the connections and the dots. And I think that's what they were lacking from the beginning. And then they were hit with this discovery from the state that was head spinning, and how far the state went in their investigation by reaching out to the Purdue professor. All of the things that Todd Click and Greg Ferenczi and Murphy collected, their head was spinning. They failed to recognize the connections to all of it outside of just the Odinist theory. And if there's really connections to, the McCains, and, their background is not normal. And the things that they study and the things that, they have obsessed over in the years it's quite eccentric, which, again, you can't rule that out. But you also, it's no different than Jerry Holman saying, well, we couldn't place Patrick Westphal in Delphi, but he was at his home where he lived in Delphi. Some of these things are right there in your face, and people are literally trying to make us feel like we're freaking stupid.
Gaslighting isn't real. It's all in your head.
Criminal network, send me that proof. I want that proof. I've been dying for that proof. I have so many emails and so many messages about these connections, about there being a militia group gathering at Ron Logan's property that weekend. I've been given information that Brad Holder, for a very short period of time, lived at Ron Logan's property. Tara German was at Ron Logan's property with her son that weekend on the 12th, when the whole Sons of Odinist ritual went down, where Megan Allen was sexually assaulted under the bridge. These are real accusations that I will not dedicate an entire live to without some semblance of proof. How do where is the proof in these things? And I mean, Fungi has been literally diving into family trees, the cemetery, who's buried there, the significance of all of these connections with Norse pagan, witches. I mean, I have been given a plethora of information and I'm not ignoring any of it, but we have so much foundational information to discuss with factual proof. And when I say factual proof, it just can't be because someone said so. I mean, show me discussions from back in 2017, 2018 that involve these people discussing these things. And it's not just a rumor that's evolved over the past 9 years. We have to have some sort of real connection to this information. And if you've got it, email it. If you have information, I will bring you on. I will let you tell your version of events. I am not.
I'll let you name my next chicken.
Hey, I want to name your next chicken.
Okay, well, give me some proof then.
I love your chickens. But I mean, I'm not a gatekeeper of information. I share all my work. I
talk to locals.
I try to show you where I get it from, and I try to connect the dots. And if I'm wrong, and I'll admit it. And just let me just get a little sly punch in the gut here. Going back to the presentation and, some of the accusations that, this week that are just really unnecessary. And the imagery that we discussed last week.
Anna used to work with Ron Logan. It says Anna used to work with Ron Logan.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. We know for a fact that Anna knew Ron Logan, but do we know that Anna knew Patrick Westphal? Did we know that Anna knew Brad Holder? Yes, Logan was dating Abby, but did Anna know that? However, you have to ask yourself, how would Brad Holder or Patrick Westphal know about Anna's love life unless they knew her? We've got to be able to make that connection. But I just want to point out here, based on the stick imagery and the stick here on Abby's right shoulder is not bullshit. Just because you have a cut off picture of the image doesn't make it bullshit. And again, sticks are sticks and they bend and they lay different ways. But at the end of the day, this is not an undoing. This is not to conceal the girls. These sticks were placed there for a reason. So I don't appreciate, somebody making a whole freaking ass post about misinformation. Don't even get me started down that road. And it's the intent that matters. My intent is to share as much factual information and disclose when it's not factual and when it's speculation. That's all I can do. And
it does appear from the I'm sorry. It does appear from the actual photos though that the stick that in the image I sent you is probably more so in the foreground than the background. It is in the picture, but it's probably more so in the foreground. So I don't think it was actually laying on top of her, which my bad. I was just going with literally tracing the image.
And you don't have to say you're bad. It is what
no,
it
it's
is.
Okay.
It's part of the picture, but at the end of the day,
I'm okay with being wrong. That's the thing. Some people aren't. I don't get it. I'm cool with it. I like it.
I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm completely satisfied with the contribution that we're making to this case. We're not sitting here talking in nonsensical forms. We're not spending 3 hours on a live bashing other people's opinions. We are making real efforts to attempt to dissect what information that we have. And that's all that we can do. So I have a couple last little announcements before we go. Do either one of you guys have anything else you want to say regarding this episode?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Well, for those of you who haven't been on the community post, we did launch and I say we because I've never, ever, ever taken credit for all of this work. It is a collective group. Um, people, people help behind the scenes who don't want to be in the forefront. I do a ton of hours of research. I cross-reference my research with other people. But we did launch our website today, the Case by Case website, which is not dedicated to the Delphi case. It is dedicated to the channel, period. We plan on picking up other cases. I have 2 or 3 cases that I'm working on behind the scenes right now that I may feel the need to present publicly, mainly to bring the spotlight to them. And moving forward, I do have some very big updates in the Ashley Garth case. And I'm happy to announce that our hard work between myself and Cherie and Travis is paying off in a very big way. I have not been given the green light to go into detail about that yet, but I'm very excited about what's to come and what these announcements may mean for Ashley's case. And there's also some other connections that I have been asked to be involved in that is still in the works. Paperwork is still being filled out and filed. And hopefully I will be brought on several different boards of very well-astounded, established, innocent project communities where between research, the people involved behind the scenes will be involved, contributing to efforts that some may make its way to the channel publicly, some may not. But I'm excited about what the direction that this is going. And hopefully one day I will be able to sit here before you and do this full time. That's the goal. And the ultimate goal is to help, whether it's contributing my free time, contributing efforts to help people behind the scenes who don't have a voice, inmates, wrongfully convicted inmates, families of convicted inmates, cases like Delphi, and I'm sure, crime is not on the downtick, it's on the uptick. So the work is going to be there to be done, and I'm excited for what the future holds. So I just wanted to say that. So with that being said, it is 4:25. We've been on here for about 3.5 hours. I think we've done enough work for one day. Well, it's a lot of work that's all been compiled into one presentation, but we will be back next week to do it all again and present even more of our research and work. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And thank you, mods. Thank you, everybody who was here. Thank you, Quester. Thank you, Fungi. You guys are awesome, and I couldn't do this without you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.